Whether you agree or disagree, or it just simply goes over your head, you can still quote me, because that's what I said.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? Uh, this is Native Talks, and welcome to my channel. If you've never been in here before, I'm just gonna tell you right now, I am a woman who likes to share my thoughts, my ideas, and memories from my childhood and my love of Jesus Christ. If that ain't how you flow, if that ain't your tea or your flavor, there was a thing that people in church used to do back in the day when I was a kid, when it came around to the collection plate being passed, a lot of them would just put their finger up and just kind of tiptoe out. You can just tiptoe out if this ain't your tea. No madness, no hatred. It's all love. I understand that my flow ain't everybody's flow. So, with that being said, if you have not heard it from these two lips, then you've been lied to and you've been tricked. Because before you can repeat it or even start to debate it, you just better make sure that you heard me say it. All right, guys, today's topic we're going to be talking about the criminal system. My take on the criminal system, my experiences with certain criminal activity that has happened in my life, things that I've seen, things that I've witnessed, and the stuff that's going on now, and how I've seen our criminal system deteriorate over the years. Just gonna kind of touch on a few things. The first thing I want to let everybody know, I do want to send my prayers and thoughts out to the victims' families of the Uvalde school shooting in Texas. My heart goes out to you guys. To lose your children that way is a very horrible thing. And it's sad, when someone's pain has to be unleashed on someone else's. The guy who did the shooting obviously was in his own barrel of pain, but he decided to take that pain and unleash it on other people. And that's never right. And it should never be tolerated. Now, I'll do another video about gun laws. We're not going to really get into that, but I know a lot of people are really pushing for gun laws to be changed. But in all honesty, y'all, guns don't kill people. People kill people with guns. Okay? And taking the gun away is not going to stop someone who wants to do harm. It is the intent of the person behind the gun. Guns don't crawl out of holsters and start shooting and all of that. So I know y'all want to change gun laws, but we need to start thinking about changing people's minds and hearts and getting people the help that they need so that those incidents don't happen anymore. We as a society, when it comes to our criminal system and our mental health system, we have failed a lot of people. And we're seeing the repercussions of our failure. It's obvious that this kid who did this shooting, this 18-year-old guy who did this, it is obvious that throughout his lifetime, he had some trouble and the system failed him. And when a person feels like that their back is against the wall and the only choice they have is to unleash that pain on somebody else, we as a society can't just sit back and be mad that he did what he did. We also got to look at ourselves and go, did we do everything we could as a society to help those who have issues? Or did we just go on about our own little lives like nothing, us four, no more type of thinking? In our society, sometimes we do that. So with that being said, I do want to let y'all know that the criminal justice system, I kind of crept into that. And what I mean by that is I have always worked with kids. When I was young, I worked in daycare centers. As I got older, that kind of transitioned to working with kids in my church. I was a youth leader in two of my churches. And I did praise dancing and dramas and plays and stuff like that. So working with kids was always my number one passion. I truly believe that's what I was born to do. But there was a time where, you know, I was looking for a job that paid more money because the job I was at just the money just wasn't making it. And I became a corrections officer in a juvenile detention facility. And so I saw how the law worked. I saw how it worked towards juveniles versus how it works for adults. And I even seen how it worked towards the genders, you know, how sometimes the law was a little easier on female inmates than it was on male inmates. Um, and sometimes, you know, females and males was charged with the same thing, and the law was really, you know, particular on how they dealt with people. So I'm just gonna kind of dive into a little bit of that. um, I began working juvenile corrections in the year 2000. I had just left a job where I was working for the state of Kansas, and I was looking for something more fulfilling and something that paid more. And I was hired to work in a juvenile detention facility. And I have to admit, I didn't know a lot about, you know, corrections. I didn't know a lot about institutions like that. And I didn't know a lot about the law either. And so when I came in, I was like a sponge. I was just soaking up everything that I could soak up, trying to learn the system and learn how to operate it. From the very first year that I worked corrections, I saw that when it came to juveniles, the law was very, very lenient. We would get repeat offenders, and that's how we got a lot of repeat offenders, was because the laws regarding juveniles were very, very light. You know, they would pick up kids for runaway, but all they would do is just release them back to their parents. You know, they would you'd get a kid arrested for drugs and stuff, and if they didn't have any previous charges, we would pretty much let them go. The only time a kid would really be detained is if they had pending charges where they hadn't been before the judge yet and they had already reoffended before it was time to go to court, or their charge was a felony. If their charge was a felony, they were automatically detained. You know, and unfortunately, for a lot of juveniles at that time, I can't say that's what it's like it is now, but at that time, you had a lot of kids getting misdemeanor charges. A lot of them were not getting felonies. They were out there just doing stupid, silly stuff, and they were getting brought in and just being re-released. But what our criminal system didn't realize is when you pat kids on the hand like that, don't do that again, but then you let them go back out there. For some kids, just being arrested was enough. It scared them enough to never want to go through that again. But for a lot of them, it was, oh, I got away with that. Oh, well, okay. I'll just be better at covering my tracks next time. I just make sure I don't get busted next time. And some of them would probably go a little while, but eventually the bust would come at some point. Because let's face it, the law's going to find you out at some point. You ain't going to be able to do dirt in the street and it not get on you. Your dirt going to always put you out there every single time. In the years that I worked juvenile corrections, I saw a lot. I saw a lot of kids go in and out. And then there were some that went in and I never saw them again. I learned a lot about the law. Now, there were plenty of times where I thought that the way the law dealt with children, I thought was way too lenient. I felt like a lot of kids were getting away with doing some really messed up stuff, but you can't control how the law is set up. Now, this was, like I said, it was back in 2000. We in 2022. I'm pretty sure a lot of laws towards juveniles have tightened up because probably there are more children now that are in the system and probably have more serious charges and multiple charges on them. So the law had to do something. The law had to step in and say, okay, these kids are, they getting rambunctious. So what are we going to do? Are we just going to keep having a turnstile where we just let them keep going outside the door? Or are we going to confront this? Or are we going to deal with this? And that's what happened. I do believe now we're seeing the effects of just letting kids go back out, just opening the doors and just letting them go back out. We're now seeing how that decision years ago in the long run ain't helping our society. Because these kids don't stay kids. They become adults. And when they become adults, if we fail them in their childhood, they're going to bring that failure into their adulthood. And then that means everybody out here in this world who don't know them have to suffer the consequences of the failure of society not getting the person the help they need or checking them for the crime that they did and giving them the right discipline for that behavior. I did notice that with adults, the rules and laws were just more stricter. But again, if you were an adult who probably was in juvenile detention when you were younger, you still were under that turnstile, behavior of the juvenile justice system. You came from that. You were birthed from that. You may have been, like when I was in corrections in 2000, you may have had people that were serving time over in the county jail or over in the prison that was probably 27, 28 years old. But let's face it, they probably did go through a juvenile detention center at some time. And if they did, then they probably were repeatedly let go. And then now we see the product of that, of them sitting in some county jail or them sitting in a prison. At some point, we gotta look at the failure that we've done. Now, that don't mean we let the inmate off. Don't get it twisted. We don't let the inmate off, because at the end of the day, the inmate made the decision, the person, the criminal, made the decision to do what they did. But if our system is flawed, then we can't expect for our criminals to have respect for it. We have to tighten up our laws so that these criminals know we're not going to put up with your shenanigans. And anytime you get out of line, we got a law and a room waiting for you. And then if you take it to a level where you see, if I was over at anybody that does what these mass shooting people do, see, I'm the type of person, I'd be like, kill on sight. I know that sounds bad, but that's what I would do. I would alert law enforcement that you have the right to just take them out. Ain't no talking about it, because they didn't want to talk to nobody. They didn't want to talk. They could have came to somebody and said, hey, I'm really feeling homicidal right now. I'm really feeling like that I don't have any choice but to hurt somebody. I really want to hurt somebody, and I don't want to do that. I'm feeling like that, but I don't want to do that. So if somebody can help me, please. But do they do that? No. They just pick up the gun and go crazy. So we have to stop that. If we let criminals know, hey, we ain't going to put up with it, you will be taken out. There's no discussion. There's no negotiation. If you go and try to shoot up people, we are going to take you out. And honestly, the situation with prisons, I know that any of y'all, I might have somebody viewing this that may have done time in prison. When I say this, I'm not necessarily talking about you. I'm just talking about the system itself. When they talk about overcrowding, see, honestly, would you commit the crime if you knew that after your trial and you were found guilty, of killing someone. And I'm really talking about murders. That's really what I'm talking about, murderers. If you knew that after your trial you were immediately taken and you were killed at that moment, that there was no going to a cell and living out the rest of your life. If you knew that the minute you committed the crime, you was going straight to your death, don't you think a lot of criminals would think twice about going and killing somebody else? If they knew, this means if I get busted, they're going to kill me. You know, back in the day, back in the 1700s and the 1800s, that's how they did. You went straight to the gallows or you went straight in front of the firing squad. It wasn't hard. Only time they really started doing all this sitting in prison was when towns and stuff, needed money, and they would build these prisons, and the prisons was making money for the town that it was built in. People were getting, funds from the government, from these cities and towns that had these prisons being built there. They was getting money. So it became a way of financing the town and helping build the town. But I mean, come on, way back in the day, there was no sitting in there for no life in prison. There was no sitting on death row. The minute your trial came, and I hate to say this, especially for a lot of Black folk, it was that way. Once it was found that you was guilty, they took you straight out to the gallows. Or they took you straight in front of a firing squad and boom, bada bing, you was out of here. If we had laws like that, and I know that sounds primitive, I know that sounds backwards, I know we living in a time where everybody wants to progress and go forward, but look what progression and going forward in our legal system has done for us. Has it made things better or has it made it worse? You have criminals who know that the law is going to probably do more for them than it will for the victims' families. There's something wrong with our laws when the victim's family feels like they didn't get justice and the criminal is out walking around free. There's one case that I did hear about, just to kind of show you the nonsense of our criminal system sometimes. There was a guy, I don't know where it was, somebody just told me about it, and it was a real bad issue. Some guy had 4 pending charges of armed robbery. Some young dude, he was about like 22, 23 years old, and he had 4 pending charges of armed robbery. The judge set his bond very, very low. He was able to bond out, and within less than 24 hours, he went back to his home and murdered his parents. And they had CCTV footage proving that he was the one that left the house right before the bodies were found. And had he stayed his behind in jail where he was and not been allowed to bond out, his parents would still be alive today. See, it's stuff like that. What judge can justify letting a dude who got 4 pending, meaning he ain't went to court on those charges yet, they're pending, and you let him bond out? And we're talking armed robbery. We ain't talking theft. We ain't talking about snatch someone's purse. No, we're talking armed robbery, which means you had a weapon and you went into an establishment and robbed somebody. 4 armed robbery charges pending. And you get to walk out the door? What is that? And we're not just seeing our whole criminal system fall apart with just the inmates. Let's not forget the corrections officer who just last month snuck an inmate out of the prison. They had the cameras showing her bringing him to the company sheriff's department car and taking off with him. And her and him in a hotel getting a freak on and doing whatever else they was doing. And then finally the police catch up with them and they decide to take off on a high-speed chase. And and what's really sad about all of that particular situation was that here this corrections officer put her family's relationship on the line. She put her career on the line, all for some inmate who told her that he loved her and wanted to be with her. And if you could just help me get out of here, it's me and you, babe. Till the cops come knocking. Here this chick did all of this to get him out. Now, what he could have done if he cared anything about her was when he seen that the cops was closing in and he realized everything that this woman jeopardized for him. If he cared anything about her, he would have said, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and turn myself in because you done lost your job. You probably going to get criminally charged. Your family probably don't want nothing to do with you because of me. I can't ask you to do any more sacrifice for me. I'm going to go ahead and turn myself in. But now, what did he do? He puts the pedal to the metal and starts driving like crazy with her in the car, crashes it, flips it over, and causes her to die. And wouldn't you know, he would come out of it with just a few bumps and bruises, but she loses her life. And she gave up everything for that dude. See, that's what I'm saying. When we have a system that doesn't thoroughly check, see, unfortunately, and I'm not trying to be, mean or anything, but there needs to be like psyche vows need to be done on potential employees. I know that we living in a time where people feel like that's, you don't have the right to be checking me on this and you don't have the right to be looking at that and you don't, but you know what? We got too many people out here that are doing things that ain't quite making sense. And if you can kind of get into their head to try to figure out what would make you do something like that, you probably find out that there are some mental unresolved issues up in there. For this woman, for this corrections officer to work on that job, I think they said she worked there for 15, 20 years. And everyone knew her and everyone trusted her. And all the while she had this weakness that nobody knew about. A weakness for some inmate telling her he loved her. Now, I don't know whether she was married. I don't know whether she had kids. I don't know. I didn't dive into the info that much, but that right there ought to tell you that something's not swirling up in there. Something ain't right. But the point is, she had a job that was supposed to protect society. And she failed in doing her job. Hooking up with him was more important than her family, her career, everything. And in the end, she lost everything, including her very own life. Y'all, we have got to look at our laws. We have got to be diligent in voting for people who are going to stand up for what is right. Otherwise, we're going to keep having these situations. We're going to have people that are out there breaking the laws every day, knowing that they never really going to get no real consequence for it. If somebody is willing to kill somebody else, you think they tripping over 10, 15 years in prison? They ain't tripping over that. Why? They'll probably get out in less than that. If you get 10 or 15 years, you'll probably be out in 7. If you act like a good, sweet little inmate and do everything they tell you to do, you get out in 7 years. You won't even do the full 15. Something's wrong there. So that's all I'm basically saying, y'all, is we need to check our laws. We need to really make sure that criminals know you step across that line, we're going to see to it that you never going to cross over that again. that you are going to do the time that is appropriate for the crime that you committed. We're not going to make you feel like that you can just skate in and skate out. We're not going to put up with it. As a society, we got to start putting people in there. Otherwise, these mass shootings, robberies, rapes, all of these things are going to continue to happen. Because we have to make the criminal be held accountable. And the only way we're going to do that is with the laws that we put in place. That's all I'm saying, y'all. I will be back for another video. But I do thank y'all for hanging out with me. Do check out my other videos that I have on here. I'm going to try to be on here more. I'm going to be doing my Mother's Day one. I was supposed to do one on Mother's Day, but it was just Mother's Day was very hard for me. So I'm going to try to get through that and do one. But I do thank y'all for hanging out with me. And until the next episode, see you.
If you like my vibe, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Till the next time, see ya.